Suzanne Markus has perfected the art of disappearing. She moves through the crowded bar like water finding its level, present but unnoticed, useful but unmemorable. The riverside lounge on a Friday night is chaos, bodies pressed against bodies, voices climbing over each other, the smell of spilled liquor and expensive cologne mixing into something acrid and thick. She slides between clusters of people with a tray balanced on one hand, clearing glasses with the other, her black work shirt absorbing the anonymity like fabric absorbs water. Tonight her hands are shaking. She doesn't know why she let herself think about it while working. That was the mistake. During her shift, the world is divided into simple tasks: collect empty glasses, wipe tables, pour drinks, smile when necessary, disappear again. There is no room for thinking about overdue bills. No space for considering that Markus's school supplies cost more than she has in her checking account. No time to acknowledge that her mother's medication ran out 3 days ago and she has been telling her it is on backorder when the truth is that backorder costs money she does not have. The trick is to not think about it. The trick is to make her hands do their work while her mind goes somewhere else entirely. But tonight the trick is failing. She is reaching for a bottle of bourbon when the crack appears in her composure. It is small. Almost invisible. Just a slight tremor in her fingers as she grips the bottle neck, a breath that catches somewhere between her ribs and her throat. She steadies herself against the edge of the bar. No one is watching. In 8 months of working at the riverside, she has learned that no one watches the bartenders. They are furniture. Necessary but unseen. The voice cuts through the noise like a blade. Why is she crying? It is not loud. That is what makes it terrifying. In a room full of sound and bodies and the relentless energy of people who have money and power and no reason to be careful about either, this voice finds her anyway. It is quiet enough that only a few people hear it. It is quiet enough that it should not carry any weight. It carries all the weight in the world. The music seems to stall. Not stop exactly, but something shifts in how people are listening to it. She feels the moment before she sees it, the way the room inhales and holds its breath. Conversations don't stop, but they quiet. Bodies don't go rigid, but there is a sudden stillness underneath the movement, like a predator has entered the space and everyone's survival instinct has recognized it. She knows who is here without looking. Fernando Friedman does not need to announce himself. The Riverside Lounge knows his presence the way a room knows when the temperature has dropped. He comes here sometimes, not often, and when he does, the texture of the air changes. People become more careful. Drinks taste sharper. Everyone suddenly remembers that there are consequences in the world and some of those consequences have names and faces and the kind of quiet power that makes you understand, very clearly, that you are small. She has watched him from the safety of her invisibility for months. Has learned the geometry of how he moves through space. How he never enters a room the way other people do, no hurrying, no hesitation, just the absolute certainty of someone who owns the ground they walk on. He wears tailored suits that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His skin is dark and smooth except for a thin scar that cuts through his left eyebrow, which somehow makes him look more dangerous rather than less. His eyes are the kind that do not glance. They assess. They measure. They remember. He is looking at her. She realizes this the way you realize a cliff is beneath you, too late to change anything, only fast enough to understand what is happening as it happens. His eyes have found her across the bar, past the clusters of people, through all the noise and distraction, and they are holding her in place as surely as if he had reached across the distance and taken hold of her by the throat. "I'm sorry, sir." The words scrape out of her, barely audible over the jazz playing softly from the speakers. "I'm fine. Everything is fine." She is not fine. Her hands are visibly shaking now. She has set the bourbon bottle down because she is afraid of what will happen if she tries to pour while falling apart, and her fingers are curled so tightly into fists that her nails are drawing crescents of pain into her palms. He does not respond to her words. He simply walks toward her, and the crowd parts for him like water, like they have been waiting for an excuse to move aside. He is tall, taller than she realized from a distance, and the way he moves is like watching someone who has eliminated all unnecessary motion from their body. Every step is calculated. Every gesture is weighted with intention. He stops in front of her with 3 feet of bar between them, close enough that she can smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that makes her think of things she has no business thinking about. "Look at me," he says. It is not a request. Nothing about his voice suggests that refusal is an option. She has watched him enough to understand that. He does not ask questions the way other people do. He speaks in declaratives. Commands dressed up as conversation. She raises her eyes. The first thing she notices is that he is older than she thought. Late 30s, maybe early 40s, with lines around his eyes that suggest he has spent a long time looking at things he did not like. The second thing she notices is the scar again, now that she is close enough to see it properly, thin and pale against his dark skin, cutting through his left eyebrow like someone marked him long ago and he decided to keep the mark instead of hide it. The third thing she notices is that he is really seeing her. Not through her. Not past her. Not with the distracted attention that most people give to service workers. He is looking at her the way you look at something you are trying to understand. His gaze moves across her face, takes in the concealer under her eyes that did not quite cover the shadows, notices the way her mouth is soft when it is not guarded, sees the exhaustion that lives in her shoulders. She had spent 20 minutes this morning trying to look put together enough that people would not ask questions. His eyes find every question anyway. "What is your name?" he asks. For 8 months, no patron at the riverside has asked her name. She has served hundreds of drinks. She has cleared tables for people who barely acknowledged her existence. She has existed in this space as perfectly as she could manage as a ghost, a shadow, a woman in black clothes whose purpose was to appear and disappear. "Suzanne," she says, and her own name sounds strange in her mouth, like something she is remembering instead of claiming. "Suzanne," he repeats, and when he says it, it becomes a different word than it was. Heavier. Realer. Like he has taken something that was invisible and made it solid by speaking it aloud. He smiles then, but it is not a warm smile. It is the kind of smile that a man gives when he has made a decision that cannot be unmade, and he is remembering that he enjoys the consequences. "You are going to tell me what is wrong," he says. It is not a question. "And then you are going to tell me what I can do about it." He pauses, and in that pause, everything changes. The moment becomes the kind of moment that people mark as before and after without even realizing it. "No one cries in a room I am in without me understanding why," he continues, and his eyes hold hers, and there is nowhere left to hide. "My name is Fernando Friedman. And you, Suzanne, are no longer invisible. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the moment. Because what happens next is not what Suzanne expected. This story goes somewhere darker, somewhere more dangerous, somewhere most people won't see coming. Subscribe so you don't miss how this invisible girl becomes the most important person to a man who controls an entire city. The silence that follows is the worst kind of silence. It is not the absence of sound, the music continues, conversations resume their broken rhythms, glasses clink against the bar. It is the silence of a room pretending normalcy while holding its breath. Everyone is listening now. Everyone knows that Fernando Friedman has stopped the flow of an ordinary night to speak to a bartender, and that fact alone rewrites the meaning of everything that came before it. Suzanne's throat has gone dry. She reaches for a glass of water, forgetting that she does not have one, and the small failure of the gesture makes her feel even more exposed. Her hands need something to do. Her body needs permission to move away. But Fernando's eyes have not left hers, and she understands now that permission is not something he grants easily. "I asked you what is wrong," he says, and his voice is conversational in the way that makes it more dangerous, not less. The casual tone suggests he is genuinely curious, that her answer matters, that refusal is unthinkable. "You said everything is fine." That was a lie. It is not accusatory. It is a simple statement of fact, the way he might observe that the weather is cold or that the bourbon they serve here is overpriced. But the words land between them like a challenge. I don't. She stops. Tries again. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. You shouldn't have cried? His eyebrow rises, the scar flexing slightly with the movement. Or you shouldn't have let me see it? The question feels like a trap with no correct answer. Yes to either option seems like admission. No seems impossible. She settles for the truth, which feels like the most dangerous option of all. Both, she whispers. Something shifts in his expression. Not softness exactly, but a recalibration. Like he has learned something about her and is adjusting his approach accordingly. He leans against the bar with the kind of ease that suggests he has all night, that the world will wait for him to finish this conversation. Tell me about Markus, he says. The shock of hearing the name is colder than anything else has been. She has never mentioned Markus to anyone at the riverside. Has never said his name aloud in this space. The fact that Fernando knows it means he has been watching longer than she realized, or he has asked the right questions to the right people, or both, and the thought of him asking about her, gathering information about her life, makes her skin prickle with a fear that is not entirely unpleasant. How do you? You were deciding whether to spend money on his school supplies or his medication, Fernando interrupts, and it is not a guess. It is a man speaking about facts he has already confirmed. You were deciding which one matters more. You were failing at invisibility because you were failing at the math. She cannot speak. Her vision has gone slightly blurry, and she is not sure if it is tears or shock or the weight of being understood so completely by a stranger. A dangerous stranger. A man whose understanding might cost her more than his indifference ever could. Come here, he says softly. It is the gentlest thing he has asked of her yet, and it is also the most final. She moves toward him without deciding to. Fernando does not ask many questions. This is what Suzanne learns over the next hour as she stands across from him at the bar, ostensibly working but actually held in place by the simple fact of his attention. He observes instead. Watches the way her fingers move when she pours drinks for other customers. Notices when her jaw tightens at a particular moment in the evening. Sees the small rituals she uses to keep herself together, the way she touches the thin chain around her neck when she thinks no one is looking, how she checks her phone every 10 minutes with the kind of desperate hope that only comes from waiting for bad news. He asks her name again, but differently. Not the name the bar knows her by, but the full architecture of her life. Where she lives. How long she has lived there. Whether the apartment is safe. Whether she walks home alone. She answers because refusal has become impossible, but also because there is something almost meditative about being asked these questions by someone who genuinely wants to know. No one has ever asked her these things. People do not ask service workers about the texture of their lives. Fernando learns that she lives in a neighborhood on the south side, in a building that was probably nice once before the pipes started failing and the landlord stopped caring about maintenance. He learns that her mother has been sick for 2 years, that the illness is something chronic and expensive, that there is no insurance anymore because there is no job that comes with benefits. He learns that Markus is her brother, 16 years old, intelligent enough that his teachers keep saying he could go somewhere if he had the right support, if someone could afford the test prep and the application fees and the kind of stability that allows a person to dream beyond survival. He learns these things not because she volunteers them, but because he asks in the way that makes lying feel impossible. Not with judgment. Not with the kind of pity that would be almost worse than indifference. Just with the quiet certainty of someone who is used to understanding how the world breaks people. Your mother, he says at one point, and it is not quite a question. She is not getting her medication right now. Suzanne's hand still on the glass she has been polishing for the past 3 minutes. It is a tell. She knows it is a tell even as it happens. It ran out, she says carefully. I'm working on it. What kind of medication? She tells him. He listens without interrupting, his dark eyes steady on her face, and when she finishes, he nods once as if confirming something he has already decided. That ends tomorrow, he says simply. You will call your mother's doctor in the morning and tell them to fill the prescription. You will not ask about payment. There will be a card under your apartment door tonight. You will use it for this. It is not a suggestion. It is not even really an offer in the way that normal people understand offers. It is a statement of what will happen, delivered with the absolute confidence of someone who has never had his will questioned successfully. Suzanne opens her mouth to refuse. The words form in her throat. She understands, somehow, that accepting this crosses a line she cannot uncross. That Fernando Friedman does not give gifts without expecting something in return, even if he has not named what that return might be. But then she thinks about her mother's hands shaking because her medication is gone. About Markus falling asleep over homework because the apartment is cold and he is wearing 2 sweaters. About all the small ways she has been failing at keeping them alive. Okay, she says softly, and feels the invisible thread between them pull tighter. The card arrives exactly as Fernando promised, slipped under her apartment door sometime between when she leaves for her shift and when she returns home at 2 in the morning. It is black with gold lettering, understated in a way that screams money. No name on it. No explanation. Just the card and a single handwritten note on cream-colored paper that reads, "For necessities. Keep the receipts." She stares at it for 20 minutes before allowing herself to use it. The next morning, she calls her mother's doctor. The receptionist's tone changes the moment the pharmacy processes the card. Suddenly there is no problem. Suddenly the medication is ready for pickup. Suddenly the woman on the phone is using words like priority and expedited, and Suzanne understands that Fernando has not just authorized payment. He has ensured that her mother's treatment becomes important in a way that money alone does not accomplish. When she picks up the pills, the pharmacist hands her a bottle and says, "Your insurance is very thorough." And Suzanne does not correct her because correcting her would require explaining something she does not fully understand herself. That afternoon, she takes the card to the grocery store for the first time in weeks. Not the small corner market where she buys single items at inflated prices, but the large supermarket where bulk buying actually becomes affordable. She fills a cart with things she has not allowed herself to consider. Fresh vegetables. Meat. Milk that is not the cheapest option. Cereal that Markus actually likes instead of the generic brand that tastes like cardboard. Her hands shake as she loads items onto the conveyor belt, waiting for the card to decline, for the moment when reality reasserts itself and reminds her that this is not real, that this is not hers to have. The card processes without hesitation. At home, she stocks her refrigerator in a daze. The abundance of it feels obscene. She takes a photograph of the full shelves because she is afraid that if she does not document it, she will wake up and find it was a dream. Markus comes home from school and stops dead in the kitchen doorway, understanding immediately what the full refrigerator means. He does not ask questions. He just opens the door again and stares. Did something happen? He asks finally, his voice careful in the way that teenagers use when they are afraid of breaking something fragile. Someone is helping us, she says, and it is the most honest answer she can manage. Over the next week, the card becomes a tool that slowly recalibrates her entire existence. She uses it to pay the electric bill that has been threatening disconnection. She uses it to buy Markus new shoes because his old ones have a hole in the sole and he has been walking carefully to hide it. She uses it to pay her mother's landlord for the months of rent she has been falling behind on, and when the landlord calls to confirm payment, there is a new respect in his voice. Each transaction feels like a small rebellion against the life she thought she was trapped in. Each receipt she keeps feels like evidence of something changing. But underneath the relief, underneath the ability to breathe easier for the first time in years, there is a growing awareness that Fernando Friedman has placed his hand on the foundation of her life and that nothing will ever be the same. She understands, in the way that you understand dangerous things, that she now belongs to him in a way that goes beyond debt or obligation. She belongs to him because he has learned the exact weight of her desperation and has proven that he can lift it. And in a world where invisibility was her only protection, being this seen is the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to her. The first time Fernando takes her out in public, she does not realize it is happening until it is too late to prepare. He arrives at the riverside on a Wednesday night when she is not expecting him, dressed in a suit that probably costs more than her annual salary, and he waits at the bar until she finishes her shift. No one asks questions. The other bartenders understand that when Fernando Friedman waits for someone, that person belongs to him now, and there is a politeness in how they avoid her eyes that somehow makes it worse. He takes her to a restaurant in a neighborhood she has never been to, a place where the servers know his name and tables appear for him without reservation. She wears her good black dress, the one she saves for job interviews and funerals, and it feels absurdly inadequate. Everyone else is wearing things that look expensive in ways she cannot articulate. Fernando notices her discomfort and does not comment on it, which is almost worse than if he had. "You will need clothes," he says simply, cutting into his steak. "We will handle that tomorrow." She wants to refuse. The refusal forms in her throat and dies there because she knows what refusal means now. It means disappointing him. It means suggesting that his decisions are negotiable. It means creating friction in a dynamic that has become essential to her survival. "Okay," she says instead. The clothes arrive in boxes at her apartment the next day. Designer brands she recognizes from magazines. Pieces that fit her perfectly, which means he has given someone her measurements, has had her body discussed and catalogued and understood by strangers. The realization should horrify her. Instead, it makes her feel owned in a way that is becoming difficult to separate from safety. After that, she appears with him. Not constantly, but frequently enough that people notice. They see her at restaurants where service workers are invisible but women accompanying Fernando Friedman are not. They see her at events in hotel ballrooms where the air is thick with money and power and the kind of danger that wears expensive suits. Men she does not know approach Fernando and their eyes slide to her with calculation. Women whose names she will never learn assess her with a coldness that suggests they understand exactly what her presence means. She becomes a marker. A signal. A thing that says Fernando Friedman has claimed her in a way that is public and therefore consequential. The danger increases in proportion to her visibility. She notices men watching her leave the riverside. Notices cars that seem to follow her home. Notices the shift in how people speak to her when they learn her name, when they understand that she is connected to Fernando. There is a respect now, but it is the respect given to something dangerous, not something safe. One night, a man approaches her at the bar while Fernando is in the restroom. He is smaller than Fernando, older, with a smile that does not reach his eyes. He leans against the bar and says, "You should be careful. Men like Fernando Friedman do not keep women like you around for long." Something always goes wrong. She does not respond. She pours his drink with steady hands, understanding that his warning is actually a threat, that there are people in this city who would hurt her to hurt Fernando, that her visibility has made her a liability as much as it has made her a prize. When Fernando returns, he takes one look at the man's expression and understands everything that was said without a word being spoken between them. He does not react visibly. He simply places his hand on the small of her back and guides her away, and the pressure of that hand says clearly, "I know. I will handle this. You are mine to protect." It should feel like safety. Instead, it feels like being marked for war. The call comes on a Tuesday afternoon while Suzanne is restocking the bar before the evening rush. It is a number she has not seen in 3 years, a number she deleted from her phone and tried to delete from her memory, and the moment she hears the voice on the other end, the ground beneath her feet becomes unstable. "Hey, sis. It's been a while." Deshaun. Her oldest brother. The one who disappeared into the criminal underbelly of the South Side when she was 17 and has been a ghost ever since, appearing only in her worst nightmares and in the occasional warning from people who know what he has become. A name whispered with fear. A reputation that precedes him like a shadow. "Don't call me," she says, her voice shaking. "How did you get this number?" "I've always been able to find you," he says, and there is something in his tone that suggests this is a threat dressed up as nostalgia. "I heard you've been doing well. Real well. Someone's taking care of you now. That's good. That's real good, actually." The line goes quiet except for the sound of his breathing, and Suzanne understands with a clarity that feels like drowning that he did not call to reconnect. He called because he knows about Fernando. Because he has been watching. Because he sees an opportunity in her newfound safety. I need $50,000, he says flatly. By the end of the week. You've got it now, don't you? Your rich boyfriend can help you with that. Deshawn, no. I won't. You will, he interrupts, and his voice hardens into something that reminds her why she was so terrified of him when they were younger. You remember what I do to people who don't listen to me? You remember what happened to Tanya when she tried to play games? She does remember. Everyone on the south side remembers what happened to Tanya. The memory makes her stomach turn. I'll call you back, she says, and hangs up before he can respond. Her hands are shaking so badly that she cannot hold a bottle. She takes a step back from the bar, needing space, needing air, understanding that her past has just collided with her present and that there is no way to separate them now. Deshawn has always been dangerous, but he has always been a distant danger, a ghost she could pretend did not exist. Now he is real and present and making demands, and he knows exactly how to hurt her. She finds Fernando that evening at his office, a place she has never been before, a space that feels like the physical manifestation of his power. He is sitting behind a desk that is unnecessarily large, reading something on his computer, and he looks up the moment she enters as if he has been expecting her. Deshawn called me, she says without preamble. He wants $50,000. He said if I don't give it to him by Friday, he will hurt people I love. Fernando's expression does not change. He closes his laptop slowly and leans back in his chair, and the silence that follows feels like the moment before an explosion. Your brother, he says finally, and it is not a question. I haven't spoken to him in years. I don't know how he found my number. I don't know what he wants, but he sounded like he was serious, and Deshawn is always serious, and... Suzanne. Fernando's voice cuts through her panic like a knife. Stop. She stops. Deshawn, he repeats, pulling up something on his computer, is going to learn what happens when someone threatens what is mine. The certainty in his voice should comfort her. Instead, it terrifies her because she understands that by protecting her, Fernando is about to step into a conflict that might destroy everything she has just begun to build. Here's where most people think they know how this ends. But they're wrong. Because what Fernando does next, what he becomes when someone threatens what he claims as his own, is something that will change everything. The violence is just the beginning. The real question is whether Suzanne survives it with her humanity intact. Tap that notification bell if you haven't already, because the next chapters are where this story gets absolutely unhinged. Fernando does not tell her what he is going to do. He simply tells her to stay home, to keep the doors locked, to not answer calls from numbers she does not recognize. She wants to argue, wants to insist on being part of the solution, but the expression on his face makes clear that argument is not an option. There is a coldness in his eyes now that she has not seen before, a transformation from the man who has been gentle with her into something else entirely. Something that explains why people fear him. The next morning, she receives a video on a burner phone that Fernando leaves on her kitchen counter. She does not want to watch it. Every instinct tells her not to watch it. But she does, because understanding what Fernando has done is somehow less terrifying than imagining it. The video shows Deshawn in what appears to be an empty warehouse, tied to a chair, his face already swollen from impact. Fernando stands in front of him, and even through the camera, his presence is suffocating. He speaks calmly, methodically, explaining to Deshawn exactly what his mistakes were. Calling Suzanne. Making threats. Underestimating the consequences of touching something that belongs to Fernando Friedman. She watches her brother beg. Watches him cry and promise and plead for his life. Watches Fernando listen with the kind of patient detachment that suggests he has done this many times before. And when Fernando finally moves, the violence is so sudden and economical that she almost misses it. A single punch, delivered with the kind of precision that comes from years of practice. Deshawn collapses, and Fernando steps back, and the video ends. She sits on her kitchen floor and vomits into the sink. When Fernando arrives that evening, she cannot look at him. He is the same man who has been gentle with her, who has taken her to restaurants and bought her clothes and saved her family from drowning in poverty. But he is also a man capable of things that nightmares are made of, and the two versions of him cannot coexist in her mind without fracturing something inside her. He will not call again, Fernando says simply, as if this is something to celebrate. What did you do to him? Her voice sounds like it belongs to someone else, someone small and broken. What was necessary? She finally raises her eyes to his face and sees that he is not ashamed. There is no apology in his expression, no regret. There is only the absolute certainty of someone who has made a decision and executed it without hesitation or doubt. He is my brother, she whispers. He is a threat to you, Fernando corrects, and his voice carries the weight of immutable logic. That makes him a threat to me. And I do not tolerate threats. The realization settles over her like a coat made of lead. This is what she has bought with her safety. This is the price of being claimed by a man like Fernando Friedman. It is not just protection. It is also violence. It is also the knowledge that he will do terrible things in her name without hesitation or mercy. It is understanding that his love, if that is what this is, comes with blood on his hands and the certainty that there will be more blood before this ends. She stands and walks to him, and when he opens his arms, she lets him hold her. Not because she forgives what he has done, but because she understands now that forgiveness is a luxury that no longer belongs to her. She has crossed a line into his world, and there is no returning to the person she was before. The attack comes on a Thursday night when she is walking home from the riverside. She has started taking different routes, varying her schedule, doing all the things that Fernando taught her to stay safe. But safety is an illusion, and she learns this the moment a car pulls up beside her on a quiet stretch of Michigan Avenue and the back door opens. There are two of them. Men she has never seen before, with the kind of cold efficiency that suggests this is not their first kidnapping. They do not hurt her, not yet, but their hands are firm on her arms as they push her into the back seat. One of them presses a gun against her ribs, and she understands that resistance will only accelerate the timeline of her death. They take her to a building that smells like rust and decay, somewhere on the west side where the city forgets about itself. There is a man waiting for her, older than Fernando, with a face that has been broken and reset so many times that it looks like a map of old violence. He introduces himself as Victor Delgado, and he smiles when he says it like she should recognize the name. Fernando Friedman stole something from me, Victor says, circling her like she is a problem he is trying to solve. A shipment. Significant money. And then he had the audacity to think there would be no consequences. She does not speak. She has learned that speaking only gives these men more information, more leverage, more reasons to hurt her. You are going to tell him that I have you, Victor continues. You are going to tell him that if he does not return what he stole and deliver himself to me by tomorrow night, I will send you back to him in pieces. The casual way he says this, the complete absence of emotion in his voice, is more terrifying than any threat could be. This is a man for whom violence is as natural as breathing. This is a man who will follow through without hesitation or mercy. They lock her in a room with a single window that has been welded shut. There is a mattress on the floor, a bucket in the corner, and nothing else. She sits on the mattress and tries to think, tries to find some way out of this, tries to understand how her life has spiraled so completely into chaos. A phone is thrown into the room. She is told to call Fernando. He answers on the first ring, and she can hear everything in that single moment of connection. His fear. His rage. His absolute certainty that he will destroy everyone responsible for this. She relays Victor's message in a voice that does not feel like her own, and when she finishes, there is a silence that feels like the moment before a storm. Do not be afraid, Fernando says finally, and the gentleness in his voice is somehow more terrifying than anything else. I am coming for you. And everyone who touches you will die. She believes him. She believes him completely. And she understands that by taking her, Victor has not gained leverage. He has started a war that will not end until one of them is dead. She has become the reason for an apocalypse, the catalyst for violence that will ripple through the entire criminal infrastructure of Chicago. She lies on the mattress and waits, understanding that the woman she was before Fernando Friedman is completely dead now. All that remains is what he has made her into. A prize. A reason. A weapon. The warehouse where Victor is holding Suzanne becomes a war zone at midnight. Fernando does not come alone. He arrives with an army of men, and they move through the building with the kind of coordinated precision that suggests they have trained for this exact scenario. There are gunshots, but not many. Most of Victor's men surrender the moment they understand who has arrived. Surrender is a mercy Fernando is willing to grant to those who simply move out of his way. To Victor himself, he grants nothing. Suzanne hears the violence before she sees it. Here's boots on concrete, here's shouting, here's the unmistakable sound of a man being beaten into submission. She presses herself against the corner of her room, waiting for the door to open, waiting for whatever comes next. When Fernando enters, he is covered in blood that is not his own. His suit is torn. His knuckles are raw. There is a wildness in his eyes that suggests something fundamental has broken inside him. He looks at her and his entire expression shifts, the violence draining out of him and being replaced by something that might be relief or might be rage or might be both simultaneously. "Come here," he says, and his voice is gentle again, but it is the gentleness of something that has already destroyed everything in its path. She moves to him and he wraps her in his arms, pulling her close in a way that feels like he is trying to merge her into his body, like proximity is not enough to convince him that she is real and alive and still his. They leave the warehouse together, step over bodies, walk past men who are learning what it means to have crossed Fernando Friedman. Outside, the night air is cold and sharp, and the city feels smaller somehow, reduced to just the two of them and the violence they have created together. But Fernando does not take her home. Instead, he takes her to a place she has never been before, a restaurant in River North that has been closed for renovations. Inside, it is empty except for a table set for two, candles burning, food waiting. And there, in front of his men who are standing guard at every entrance and window, Fernando pulls out her chair and sits across from her. "I need you to understand something," he says, and his voice carries the weight of a vow. "I will burn this entire city to ash before I lose you. I will kill anyone who threatens you. I will destroy empires if that is what it takes to keep you safe. This is not negotiable. This is not something that changes." He reaches across the table and takes her hand, and his grip is firm enough that she can feel his pulse, can feel him anchoring himself to the reality of her existence. "Everyone in Chicago knows now what you mean to me," he continues. "They know that touching you means death. They know that your safety is my only priority. You are no longer invisible, Suzanne. You are marked as mine in a way that cannot be undone." She should be terrified. She should be devastated by what he has done in her name, by the bodies that are scattered across the warehouse, by the blood that is still drying on his skin. But instead, she feels something she has not felt since her father died when she was 12 years old. She feels protected. She feels claimed. She feels like she belongs to someone in a way that transcends danger or morality or the cost of his devotion. And when Fernando leans across the table and kisses her, it tastes like violence and promise and the absolute certainty that her invisible life is over. There is no going back from this moment. There is only forward into whatever comes next. 3 months later, Suzanne stands in a penthouse apartment on the 52nd floor of a building that overlooks all of Chicago, and she does not recognize herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her is dressed in clothes that cost more than she used to make in a month. Her hair is styled by someone whose name she will never remember. Her nails are manicured, her makeup is flawless, and there is something in her eyes that was not there before. Confidence. Or maybe it is the absence of fear. She is no longer sure there is a difference. She has quit the riverside. Fernando offered to buy it for her, but she declined. That place belongs to the woman she was, and that woman is dead. Instead, she is learning to navigate a world of charity galas and business dinners, a world where she is introduced as Fernando's woman and people nod with understanding. She is learning that being claimed publicly by a powerful man comes with its own kind of power, that people treat her differently now, that her invisibility has been so completely erased that sometimes she barely remembers what it felt like to be unseen. Markus is in a private school now, one of the best in the city. His teachers call her with praise instead of concern. He has started dreaming again, talking about universities, making plans for a future that extends beyond survival. Her mother's medication is no longer a crisis. She has been able to hire someone to check on her during the day, to handle the things that Suzanne cannot manage alone. For the first time in years, the people she loves are not drowning. Fernando finds her on the balcony as the sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. He wraps his arms around her from behind, and she leans into him without hesitation. This is what safety feels like. This is what being chosen by someone powerful enough to protect you actually means. Are you happy? He asks, and there is something vulnerable in the question, something that suggests her answer matters more than anything else. She turns to face him, and she thinks about the girl she was, the invisible girl pouring drinks and slowly dying of exhaustion and fear. She thinks about the moment he noticed her crying, the moment she was pulled out of the shadows. She thinks about everything that has happened since then, the violence and the danger and the cost of his love. Yes, she says, and it is the most honest word she has ever spoken. He kisses her, and it is gentle now, no longer tasting of blood and desperation. It tastes like home. It tastes like the life she never believed she deserved finally becoming real. She is no longer invisible. She is claimed, protected, and loved by a man who has proven that he would destroy worlds to keep her safe. She is no longer surviving. She is living. And the woman she has become is someone who understands that sometimes safety requires darkness, that love can exist in moral gray spaces, that being seen is worth whatever price you have to pay. The city stretches out beneath them, and she understands that none of it matters now except this. His arms around her. His certainty that she is worth everything. Her acceptance that she has crossed into a world from which there is no return, and she would not want to return anyway. She is finally home. If this story left you breathless, if you felt that moment where Suzanne stops fighting her own safety, then you belong here with us. Subscribe. Not because I'm asking, but because stories like this remind us that being seen, even by someone dangerous, can be a kind of love. And we're building a space where people understand that. Comment below and tell me, would you choose her path? What would you sacrifice to be that visible, that protected, that claimed?